It was an illegal search, but I wanted to see the look on the state trooper's face when he unzipped the duffel in the passenger seat. He pawed through it for a half-minute and let in a slow whistle. "Is this a prototype for the Pyrotechnics by the Seahorse and the Hummingbird?" he said, lifting the card box out and showing it to me upside down. "Yes, it is, officer. I heard about a batch of these going around in Arizona." "Fake," I told him. "Cartel knockoffs. That's the real you're holding right there, right out of Catswinkle's lab. You know, in the state of Colorado," he turned his chin up so I couldn't see his eyes over the mirrored aviators anymore, "fella could have a lot of fun with one of these." I took the hint and let him keep it. I kept the rest of my games and the 8 kilos of Afghani opium behind my quarter panels. Love being a board game podcaster.
Half-past despicable, last man to bring it through. Fast raps and critical stats, analytical slap. I'm hitting you smack, I'm sticking you smack, lips to stack chips, all with the lyric.
Hello, and welcome to episode 98 of Breakup Gaming Society, a podcast about board games, booze, and hip-hop with a big sideboard of autobiography, cocktails, comedy, melancholy, and curated hip-hop tracks. I'm your host, the Great Unclean One, recording at the lab in Starkville, Colorado. This is what to expect. Drink of the week. I put in the work. I juiced a bunch of limes and grapefruit and was rewarded with my first ever homemade Paloma, a tequila-anchored drink that also has ice, simple syrup, soda water, and a salt rim. It was just the thing that the mid-bottle of tequila I had in the cabinet needed. Get my notes on that. Games of the week. I committed to a small game buying spree, many of which were designed by good people I know online. Hear about the indie games in this pile from these small designers. Merciless role-playing games with mercifully light rules, a few easy-to-learn solo historical war games, and a disarming 2-player small box design about fireworks. Track of the week. My new pal Walt is a maven when it comes to indie tabletop role-playing games, specifically ones with wild themes and plenty of room for gore, hilarity, and rules-light improv. I picked out an instrumental track, Murder by Contract by Depth Charge, for him that I thought was a perfect mood setter for Lichoma, one of the role-playing games we're going to preview. You'll hear us both discuss that one. Quick housekeeping note, I could still use your help if you like the idea of getting an adorable Defiant Frog sticker from Print Inkling, a custom cocktail booklet featuring stunt drinks consumed on this show, and, if you feel like helping me cover postage, even a pick from my vintage 80s comic book box. Does any of that sound cool? I sure would appreciate it if you'd check out the loot at Breakup Gaming Society's donate page. Now, belly up. We're going to cast a citrus magic spell on a tequila I didn't really like. It's drink of the week.
I kicked it, yup, I kicked it, come on. You couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
The promise of getting my vitamin C and a buzz was one of the things that compelled me to make my first ever Paloma, which I tried during a recording with Walt, who had his own fixins down in Florida. I wish I could play the audio for you, but the first thing I learned about a Paloma is that when you eat almost nothing all day, then realize you're due on Discord for a recording session in 20 minutes and you haven't exercised yet and you rush through a choppy upper body routine, then use a Paloma as your recovery drink, get fucked up pretty fast. Fucked up enough to somehow not capture or download all the audio. Nonetheless, I remembered much of it. Here's how I went at this fruit juice and tequila concoction. I had Herradura Reposado, which, for the first time, I did not enjoy drinking straight when I first got it. I picked it up with fantasies of sipping it throughout the night, but ended up parking it on the shelf until I could find a recipe to pour it in. I settled on trying a Paloma, so I hand-juiced 2 grapefruit and a dozen limes. I also had on hand some unflavored La Croix sparkling water, simple syrup, and kosher salt for the glass rim, mixing it in the proportions recommended by a blog called Love and Lemons. I excitedly got it all on ice without incident, but it took me a while to taste the heart of it because I'd oversalted the rim. That kosher salt was so potent, my first few sips were some kind of liquid pouring through a boulder field of salt stuck to my lips. It was shockingly salty. But like most of our minor mistakes in life, salt dissolves. A few sips later, I got the payoff I wanted. After my senses rebalanced, it showed its glory in the middle stage. Tart, cold, fizzy, and smooth against the push of the salt, and the boring Herradura almost completely buried except for a pleasant afternote The drink seemed to snip all the front-end agave load that had so displeased me before and instead showed me the spirit's soft ass, an almost buttery chase at the end of every sip. I finally found the part of this Herradura bottle that I liked. Over on the other end of the phone, Walt was posted up with some lime-flavored fizzy water, some ocean spray grapefruit, and a bottle of Espolón Blanco. This was his first time with tequila since his standard Jose Cuervo cautionary example scenes as a teenager. He was surprised to find the Espolón quite friendly when he sampled it before the mix. But when I connect with him the next day, he says he's once again done with tequila. Personally, I think it's because he used too much ocean spray. I merrily continued pouring long after our call. My fruit juice ran out, but I kept at it into the night, getting to the point where I was just dumping tequila on soda and ice, which was fine. A week later, I saw that I still had some dregs of the Herradura bottle, so I finished it off neat, circling back for one second chance nip. Nope. Didn't like it any more than the day I bought it. The next time I drink a tequila straight, it's going to have to do better than this. Even after warming my mouth with one sip, the first hit of that agave flavor just tasted like plastic and ethanol trying to wear a plant costume mask. It had too little charm, and there was nothing seductive or noticeable on the finish. I think I need to splurge a little the next time I'm in the tequila section. Next, a failed attempt at playing King of Tokyo for money, a slew of indie games for the fall preview, and more detailed praise for Vijayanagara, the Deccan empires of medieval India.
I kicked it, I kicked it, come on, you couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
Games of the Week starts with a whimper in a hotel dining room in Trinidad, Colorado. I'm talking about King of Tokyo Headhunter Edition, which is something I made up because I'm already pretty firm that King of Tokyo should not be played sober. I never enjoyed the after-dinner family time-wasting sessions. It didn't look like anybody else did either. But as a nightcap, with a bit of hooch to get your bloodlust up and make the dice sound like war drums, that's when the game appears. I've always wondered if you could juice King of Tokyo up, make it meaner, cut right down to the sensation of the kill, plus add modest stakes. So I tried it out on some pals at the tail end of happy hour at the Hilton Gardens Inn. For the handful of people who don't play board games but are still here because you like hearing me talk generally, King of Tokyo is an easy-to-learn, dice-chucking kaiju battle designed by Richard Garfield, the same guy who designed Magic: The Gathering. It is a riot if you're 7 or you're an adult who wears Crocs. It's a King of the Hill battle with you and up to 5 enemy monsters duking it out in Tokyo. In the off-the-shelf version, you can eliminate other monsters by reducing their health to 0, but also win by stacking victory points. For the Headhunter edition, I made a few simple but drastic modifications, taking every card focused on victory points out of the upgrade deck, leaving only attack and recovery stuff. Stipulating a $5 ante for each monster. If you die, whatever cash that's under the base of your monster goes to the monster who landed the blow, and so on until there's a bunch of dead monsters and one monster roaring, holding all their gas money. Final mod. If you finish a turn with 3 of any numeral showing on the dice, you add that many dollars to your monster's ante, making you a more profitable target. So how did it go? It sucked. Mechanically, the big downside was that monsters, rather than being goaded into an insane slaughter, built up an immense field of upgrade cards that made killing them almost impossible. I envisioned quick submission matches, direct lines to modest but still exciting piles of blood money, emptying pockets and building grudges. Didn't happen. There we were in the lobby of the Hilton Gardens after, 45 minutes, with the dinner crowd coming in and all the monsters politely parked on their original antes. We broke camp after a beer and took our money back. I think the best outcome would have been if maybe a kid had wandered over and wanted to play. Sure, you tell it. Go tell your mom you need some money for snacks, leading to some kind of scene where you fleece the rugrat for $20 and it melts down because you keep killing its monster and taking its money, and the parents get furious and you get banned from the property. That would at least make a memorable final King of Tokyo session. Me and the boys talked briefly about ways to improve it, such as getting rid of all the defensive cards too. But I think the biggest improvement is to just give this box away to somebody with kids so we can dig into the Breakup Gaming Society fall preview, a look at all the new-to-me games that are hitting my mailbox and download folder. We'll wrap up the previews with a closer look at Vijayanagara. As far as fairly substantial multiplayer games go, this one's my game of the year. I figured out why. So back in episode 96, we met Walt, who told us about Carolina Death Crawl from Pulpit Games, a role-playing game that turns you and 3 others into Carolina boys who signed up for the Union Army and who just got stuck together behind Confederate lines after Potter's Raid, a real-life late-war action by the Union to strike at the Rebs' railroad supply lines. The longer I marinated on what Walt told me about the game, the more attractive the concept looked, a historically based RPG that quick-starts stories and characters that you bring to life. The plot points are more about character flaws and motivations than tactical stuff, and the outcome always promises to be grim. Only one character is going to make it home. I got my set of cards in the mail yesterday, and I just met Walt's group on Discord. We're going to play this thing, and I'm already thinking about whether I want to go method and try a Southern Carolina accent. Of course, there are other decisions to be made beforehand, including what tone we want to set. A comedic adventure, a mournful horror slog, or something else. The cards in this Carolina Death Crawl box have a series of plot cues, each with sure-footed period language and flavor, suggesting a propulsive and lean storytelling exercise with minimal overhead and lots of character development. Nice thing? I don't have to sell the experience to anyone. I failed at that when I bought a Morkborg design with a killer-looking book a few years ago and realized when the locals say role-playing, they really just mean D&D. It's like trying to talk food with people who only like Applebee's. Fortunately for me, Walt's group are passionate indie TTRPG dudes, so I'm eager to see how one of these games are run and stretch my collaborative storytelling muscles inside Carolina Death Crawl's economical framework. Look for a session report on that before the year is out. I have attempted to provision myself for the terrors ahead and quake to think of what I might find. It feels more Georgia, doesn't it? I got some research to do. Also here in the mailbox, Pyrotechnics, a 2-player card game designed by Michael Byron Sprague and published by designer Jason Katzwinkle's The Seahorse and Hummingbird venture. I bought a 1 yard from the finish line prototype of this because I watched Jason's feed for years as he built small game designs in public, wrestling with and solving everything from visual design to game structure to the undergirding math of the thing. It was fascinating. It's the thing I want to point people to when they hear I have a board game podcast and that I like playing games. Well, why don't you make up your own game? Because that shit is hard, that's why. Why don't you make a game where you shut up? Anyhow, Pyrotechnics promises a 10-minute playtime in which you and your opponent are fireworks designers, each trying to be the first one to empty out the cards in their hand. This effort runs off 3 simple actions: research, discover, and showcase for when you're ready to drop a new display from your R&D shed. But it looks like the fireworks in terms of thinkingness comes in the form of an economy of 6 colored token varieties called sparks. When you pick one of the 3 actions, you trigger mandatory exchanges of major and secondary sparks that keep them moving between the supply, yours and your opponent's. I'm impressed by the quality of this prototype, but not surprised. Based on what I saw Katz post on the average day, even his preliminary output is sharp and tight and fastidious in the good sense of the word. Use of color, type, and space, down to the satisfying heft of the accordion fold rulebook and guides, shows pro-level thinking from Katz, game designer Michael Sprague, graphics guy Gavin Pulio, and editor David Kessler. Think deep and play light, urges a piece of text on one of the player guide panels. The latter directive seems wonderfully easy to meet. I got all the pieces out, read the rules. It was late on a hot summer afternoon and my brain was half spent, but even one trip through the components and I knew I could test run this two-handed on any given morning. As for Think Deep, I'm curious to feel my way through how the flow of spark tokens drives the tough decisions and creates opportunities for ruses. As a piece of descriptive copy on the game's landing page promises, you'll bluff, block, and bait your opponent, timing your research, discover, and showcase just right to outmaneuver them. Here's hoping. As reported to me in direct messages by Jason Katzwinkle, this pretty little game is about 99.4% complete and will be available soon for a modest $15. Check seahorseandhummingbird.com. take a look for yourself. One thing missing from my summer mornings in 2025 has been a quick player solo game to cycle along with the first few cups of coffee. Enter Battle Card from Postmark Games, who specialize in beautiful print-and-play puzzle and adventure games. Battle Card is a bid to make a historically faithful strategic war game that presents you with the same decisions a World War II general would have had to make, but at a highly streamlined satellite's eye view. This game unites a publisher and a designer I admire. Postmark's typically brilliant and efficient graphic design with game designer David Thompson, who has a special knack for interpreting the drama and details of a wartime setting into a wide variety of accessible tabletop experiences. The hit Undaunted series was his brainchild. He designed Resist, a solo game set during the Spanish Civil War. Another of his designs, Pavlov's House, is on my table right now. Battle Card lets him flex his gift for lightweight elegance inside Postmark's maximum value with minimum pieces ethos. All you need is a printout of whatever map you want to try and a fistful of your own six-sided dice, which represent division or army group level units whose values change as they attack or defend. Right now, I'm looking at a map of the Malayan campaign, or Malayan, when Japanese forces swiftly overran British Commonwealth and Allied defenses. In this one, you take the role of Allied forces who had to slow the advance of the surging Imperial Japanese Army long enough to organize a retreat to Singapore, a major British stronghold. As the Brits and their cohort, you're not going to win in the pure sense, but you get the essence of the pressure the commanders were under. Find the right balance of retreat and rearguard attacks to get the bulk of your men and machines back to Singapore without getting blown to shit. All with one page of rules. This could be a long string of fun mornings, I thought to myself. Then I looked at the download folder and realized that for £5 UK, I also had map files and concise rules for Operation Market Garden, when the Allies tried to airdrop their way to a European invasion foothold in 1944. The Battle of Moro River, where you play as Canadians contending the Germans for key ground during winter conditions in Italy. Operation Brevity, a Commonwealth forces effort to relieve the siege of Tobruk in North Africa while seizing key ground from Rommel. The Battle of Mortain, where Americans tried to fend off German counterattacks during the big summer of '44 push in France. Operation Edelweiss, where a German player races to lock down southern Russian oil fields in '42. And it doesn't look like the same rules and challenges were just cut and pasted into different shaped maps. I'm seeing wrinkles that change dynamics, objectives, and tactics. For example, the effect of weather is factored in for the Moro River battle. Jesus Christ, all for £5? This is simply an insane value right off the bat. More on this as I get my teeth into the introductory fights. Speaking of insane value, free ranks pretty high up there. My big bro, Noisy Andrew, who is my opponent and teacher for learning Squad Leader, has been prepping a copy of his print-and-play design, Dive, 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 for me. It's a co-op game for 1 to 4 players inspired by The Hunters, a classic solitary U-boat game from GMT Games. Andrew wanted to present his own twist on it. So when he's done trimming cardboard, I'll also be trying my hand at dueling with Allied Atlantic convoys per his system. Noisy is like your loving big brother who knows how to do everything. Every day he's elbow deep in fixing a friend's car, working on real boats he knows how to sail, playing with instruments, and also making small games, many of which are free to try at partymeeple.com.au. This is a good chance for me to engage with something a pal made and broaden the range of war games I get to experience without committing to a big box purchase and a 6-week grind with a rule set. We'll circle back to old Noisy with complaints and questions, not only about how this game works, but why he was inspired to make his own tweaks to one of wargaming's most beloved modern naval campaign designs. Oh yeah, remember Walt and Carolina Deathcrawl from the beginning of this segment? He is also shipping me a copy of Lichoma, a meat-punk RPG designed by Streta Vandenberg, with writing and editing support from Tessa Winters, Ashley Kronebusch, Ian Long, and Walt, who operate under the Bogfolk collective banner. They successfully kickstarted this grim and bawdy commentary on capitalist reductionism in a town where meat, to wear, to eat, to sell, to kill, to screw, is the last economic cornerstone of a collapsing city's economy. There's nothing left to extract, except your muscle tissue and a few laughs. In a future episode, Walt's going to talk me through how and why this was made and how it is played. Get an eye full of Lichoma, that's Lichoma, for yourself on itch.io, or watch the crew play it on YouTube, where the +1 EXP channel hosted a live session. I've been watching it in bits. They seem to be going at it in a highly comedic way. I just saw a build-up scene where the party hit a giant weapons store en route to a contract grudge demolition of a popular Ferris wheel, and a character named Grub Grub, who keeps a seeing eye cockroach in a kangaroo-like pouch in their midsection, was musing about whether or not the roach should have its own firearm. So far, I'm really digging the group's rapport and in-character banter. That concludes previews of Carolina Deathcrawl, Pyrotechnics, Battle Card, Dive, 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 and Lichoma, a small creator parade that's going to move slowly across my table this fall and, inexorably, into your heart. Lastly, I want to take you back to medieval India for deeper thoughts on my initial take on Vijayanagara, the Deccan empires of medieval India 1290 to 1398 from GMT Games. Outside of obsessive faraway play on Board Game Geek, this is my heartthrob. I'm now at the tail end of 2 more parallel games on rallythetroops.com and have a better handle on why I find myself thinking about it day and night. I want to start out with a quote from game reviewer Charlie Farrell from the July 14th edition of his superb Substack newsletter, Illuminating Games. In the course of talking about Red Dust Rebellion, Jared Carmichael's weighty futuristic entry into the counterinsurgency, or COIN, system of games, he said this, quote, "The defining feature of COIN is that you never really get anything done. You're at the mercy of the action deck for your activations, and actually taking a turn, which could be a trivial limited op, paralyzes you for the next card, so you can never truly gain momentum. You can't do anything complex or have much of a plan," end quote. Now, Vijayanagara is built on a system called the Irregular Conflict series, which is an offshoot of the COIN system, but everything he says here I find is also true of Vijayanagara. The forced cooldown of having your empire's action counter stuck in the ineligible box for what feels like decades, it's agonizing as you watch your eligible enemies disassemble your board position. Throw in the volatility of the events and you can quickly feel like you're in a lifeboat with one oar, 10-foot swells coming at you from all directions. But this is a feeling I've come to embrace as a beginning-level player of this game. A lot of it has to do with how my brain works. It takes me an immense amount of effort and repetition, and even conscious emotional regulation, to be responsible for an outcome in a long, hard-fought game where there's a clear and unforgiving line from the decisions I made to the end result. And there's a reason I don't fuck with chess. For me, in-game chaos that hides perfect knowledge and short-circuits perfect plans is like a jester that lifts the anxiety of analysis paralysis and pleasantly scumbles what would otherwise be a stark picture of incompetence and ineffectual play. It pleasantly confuses the killjoy in my head that tells me the poor job I did was the only story. As somebody who craves a mix of pure experience, exploration, surprise, and the occasional win, the Jester of Fate shows me happy troughs in between the waves where I can make a satisfying and clever tactical move without seizing at the terror of being responsible for a grand scheme. As I reflect on a loss, I can savor ideas for improvement in digestible pieces because they sit alongside a comforting serving of, well, there wasn't shit I could have done about that. Vijayanagara is giving it all to me right now. The spark of competition, the right level of detail and weight, an intriguing time and place, and the delight of a rambunctious story I'm only partially responsible for writing. Other notes on what is making this so fun for me. 1. I think it's important that I'm getting to play it on rallythetroops.com. My opponents in the 2 simultaneous virtual games are spread from Vancouver to Krakow to Perth. That's a lot of time in between turns to study and savor the board. The deliberative pace helps me. I can ignore the first stab of disappointment at seeing one of my cherished regions overtaken by a neighbor who I thought I had under control and think about it a second time, a third. Put me at a table where that's happening, I flounder and sink under the pressure, making unfocused and spastic moves. This mode of play is a perfect midpoint between merry skull bashing and the contemplative. 2. I only knew about Timur, also known as Tamerlane, in relation to Eurocentric history. I think at one point the Pope or somebody sent an emissary to him because Rome thought the Mongols were Christians and might help them subdue the Levant for Jesus and loot. Now I'm looking up figures and cultures from all over Asia as their own galaxy with its own centers of gravity instead of as a distal chapter in the movement of European kings, which I think is one of the things the design team wanted to get board gamers to think about. 3. I love how the game has historical acts that match the play, mimic the arc of history, and force an interesting finish for everybody. It's great to be the Sultanate in the early game when you can crush almost anything in your line of sight and the Mongols haven't shown up yet. It's great to be the breakaway Bahmani kingdom in the middle game when you can carve off fat servings of the Sultanate's provinces as their grip starts to weaken and use your money-making ability to hassle the nascent Vijayanagara with cavalry strikes. In the late stage, the Rajas of Vijayanagara vent north over the board, their slow-building strength manifesting right as their rivals have just about punched themselves out. There's a mix of experience levels in the two separate games I'm playing, but in each one, the game's aggregate messiness somehow pushes the cluster of victory point markers close enough to each other at the finish so that even a faction that got ground into the dirt 3 turns ago can tip the scales or even seize the win before the final Mongol assault on Delhi closes the whole thing out. As to whether this forgiving bit of slack is built into the design as a leveling device or a function of my two groups' general experience or playstyle, I'm not certain. 4. I love the asymmetry, both in how it models its setting and incentivizes each of the sides in this 100-plus year push and pull. After 2 plays as the mighty Sultanate, I tried commanding the Bahmani kingdom. It was a delicious new vantage point that required new thinking. I wasn't a guy who could throw tens of thousands of troops around the board anymore in between feeding bits of meat to the hunting falcon on my wrist. I had to learn the nuances of the Deccan influence track, a specialized part of the Challenger Kingdom's dashboards that forces the Vijayanagara and Bahmani players to think about when and where they should take a break from playing cat and mouse with the Sultanate and instead chuck something mean and pointy over their neighbor's fence. The Bahmani's influence track has different motivations and rewards than Vijayanagara's. With how much Rally the Troops lightens the mechanical burden, it's easy to step into different roles and shortcut to thinking about the possibilities of what you can do instead of how you can do it. I have a pledge on GMT's website for the second printing of this game. I love everything about it, and I want a physical copy, so I can also play it solo whenever I like using the bot decision cards for NPKs, non-player kingdoms. This game found me at the right time, and I intend to make countless circuits across its engaging and hotly contested green expanse. Here comes Track of the Week.
I kicked it, I kicked it, come on, you couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
You can consider this episode's Track of the Week a kind of preview for the Lichoma role-playing game. Maybe it was the night I looked at the game's art and considered its implications, but Lichoma's presentation threw a chill all through me. The same thing happened the first time I ever heard Murder by Contract by Depth Charge. What follows is audio of Walt and I talking about things we liked from this patient and menacing instrumental trip-hop composition. I just poured a second one full strength, and I think we should probably bag Track of the Week quickly.
Right on, man.
Here's how drunk I'm getting. I was trying to make a Lichoma jingle on my smoke break. Yeah, if you're walking down the street to the sound of slapping meat and you can't afford new feet, it's Lichoma.
Print it, sell it.
Based on the theme of the game that I was exploring with Walt, I wanted to pick something that had enough hip-hop DNA. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to hit him with Murder by Contract by Depth Charge. So that's our Track of the Week. And I picked it because, to me, and tell me if you agree, listeners, this song sounds like if a director were shooting a story, what the character would be, or what the audience would be hearing as background music on their morning commute.
Yeah, it has that vibe, and like the album art for this is 100% Strega Bonerland style, meshes perfectly, even right down to the color scheme. The mood is there, the vibe is there. It's very, very fitting.
I want to talk about it in two sections, which is the sort of nervous build, and then in the end when he loops that building wash of really alienating synthesizer at the end. This song was so evocative for me. The first time I heard it, I pictured a traveler or an astronaut landing on some place where the geometry and the dress and the language and the codes were so foreign to him that he didn't even understand why he was being executed, but it sounded like an execution march to me.
Yeah, very much. And I didn't notice the beat, but now that you've mentioned it, like, yeah, I think you're right. It's just that very steady plotting all throughout the song.
And as far as the end of the song, there's another touch. It's a surge of sound that only appears furtively in the first half, but in the end, he sort of brings the song's implied horror or dread to the forefront.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something you said earlier that I really love about this is it has a very clear build and tension, like almost like its own narrative arc where it reaches this pitch and then it slumps back down into the falling action. And it does an incredible job with that of making that anxiety build in your spine and then bringing it to a head and then letting it fall off to the end of the song.
You're just subsumed in this wash of, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to the front. And this song is almost like a painting or maybe it's either late at night and you think that maybe some of the figures and the colors in the paintings subtly changed because it's a patient track. It's not something you put on when can you imagine even your most patient friend is like, listen to this one.
It's like trying to put on like a Teardrop by Massive Attack and like waiting for it to get through its long intro so that your friend can hear the substance of that song. And they're sitting there staring at you from like the top of the stairs.
So there we go. That was our track of the week. Walt, thank you once again for coming on and giving us this interesting, disturbing and game. What the fuck? I have the syntax of how
it is disturbing and game.
You know what? I've reverted to a HAL 9000 in the last half of fucking 2001. You can just put a screwdriver into my neck while I try to sing "Mary Had a Little Lamb." We can probably kill the recording now. That'll be all, Craig.
Oh, do we want to do the outro line?
Oh shit! What show is this again? It's your show, Stu.
That's great. I love this show.
So, well, on behalf of Breakup Gaming Society, I'm going to raise my second and hopefully last Paloma. May you fight long and well.
Likewise. May you fight long and well, and don't sniff glue.